everyone. I'm Tiffany Wong with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan President Ching-te has welcomed Prime Minister of Tuvalu Teo in Taipei with military honors.
这次是戴斐利总理上任后第3次访台，也是首次进行国事访问，不仅象征两国邦谊稳固友好，也展现戴斐利总理对两国外交关系的重视与支持，携手面对地缘政治以及极端气候变化所带来的各项挑战，共同促进人民福祉以及国家繁荣。
Teo is in Taipei to sign a new treaty that would be the basis for future cooperation between the two countries. Tuvalu is one of Taiwan's 12 remaining official diplomatic allies. Last week, Taiwan also welcomed Prime Minister Terence Drew from Taiwan's Caribbean ally, St. Kitts and Nevis. Beijing is tightening the screws on members of IPAC, an international alliance of lawmakers concerned about China's threats. Our reporter, Cadence Carranza, spoke with IPAC's executive director, Luke DePulford, to learn more about the pressure it faces.
You've said lawmakers from the Gambia, Malawi, and the Solomon Islands were pressured by China to withdraw from IPAC. What did that pressure look like?
We heard fairly early on that Malawi had come under pressure from the PRC, but not the politicians directly. It was actually the Malawian government. It was the presidential office who had heard directly from the government of the People's Republic of China, who had threatened them. And they had indicated that the presence of the Malawian president in China would not be welcome unless the two co-chairs for Malawi for IPAC left the network. So we then heard from our Malawian politicians who confirmed that they had indeed been under pressure to leave. And they wrote us a letter effectively leaving IPAC, which looked like it had been dictated by the Embassy of the People's Republic of China because it contained language in it about the One China principle and particularly mentioned Taiwan. So it was pretty clear what had happened there. The Solomon Islands was different. There was correspondence between the PRC again and the Solomon Islands government, which said, we have conditions for engagement with your government. And those conditions were, number one, these people have to leave IPAC. Number two, you have to make a statement in support of the One China principle. So we lost that member from the Solomon Islands. Very notably, though, Peter Kenaloria Jr. wouldn't leave and has stayed firm.
And aside from these incidents, have there been any other times when China has put pressure on IPAC members?
There were many other attempts at coercing IPAC members. Before the Taipei summit took place, somehow China got hold of our delegates list, so everybody that we were going to invite to the summit. I still don't know how they did that, but it was leaked to them. And in the days leading up to the summit, they contacted lawmakers in 11 countries to try to pressure them to stop them from going to Taipei. Now, we're talking very undiplomatic approaches here. It's not like they wrote a formal letter to the Speaker of these people's parliaments, or they wrote a formal letter with a formal invitation for a meeting. They were, by and large, WhatsApp messages, either individually to the legislators or to their party leaderships in order to try to put them under heavy pressure for what they described as urgent meetings. They weren't urgent meetings, it was just China trying to threaten people, stopping them from coming to Taipei. They've also had somebody impersonating me for about 5 years, who sends emails to colleagues within IPAC claiming that events have been cancelled, sends emails to family members to say things about me which are not true. But more recently, the PRC has been on more of a charm offensive, and they're wanting to speak to our members, and they're wanting to draw them into slightly more routine quasi-diplomatic exchanges in order to try to discover what they're up to and exert pressure in the usual way, through bilateral meetings as opposed to direct coercion, which is what IPAC has experienced too much of, I think. Well, they're now sending letters to IPAC members where they are inviting them in their capacity as IPAC co-chairs to meet with the Chinese ambassador. That's the first time that's happened, really.
That was Luke DePulford, Executive Director of IPAC. How is Taiwan doing as a tech investment destination? According to former Intel chief Pat Gelsinger, who's in Taipei, the future looks bright. His message highlights Taiwan's manufacturing speed and its critical role in the next wave of AI hardware. Chris Gorin brings us this report.
Pat Gelsinger, former CEO of U.S. chip giant Intel, is in Taipei with his new venture capital firm, announcing several new investments and collaborations here. Gelsinger, who ran Intel for 4 years, has visited Taiwan several times in recent years. He praised the country's technological prowess during his speech.
There is no place like Taiwan. I sometimes joke that you can have an idea at breakfast, you can have a prototype by lunch, and you can have manufacturing by dinner.
Gelsinger's new firm, Playground Global, publicly introduced 2 new portfolio companies, as well as Taiwan-based partnerships with startups it's invested in. Companies present included those working on silicon photonics and power delivery for chips, cutting-edge technologies aimed at solving the main bottlenecks of computing speed and efficiency, which analysts say are key.
I'm the most excited for various technologies in power delivery. That's an area that hasn't been innovated on that much over the last 2 decades, and there's a lot of innovations that can come.
The former tech boss also answered questions from the media. Asked about his thoughts on AI, he downplayed concerns over an investment bubble and called AI a foundational technology. He also waded into the energy debate in Taiwan, warning the country would need to address its power supply issues to stay ahead of the curve.
The greatest issue in Taiwan, right, isn't even software, right, and architecture. It is energy, right? You are not in a position to have a resilient energy supply chain, and that, I think, puts your entire industry in a very precarious state.
But those concerns haven't slowed down investments in the country. Gelsinger's announcements seem to be a vote of confidence in the future of AI and in Taiwan's tech manufacturing industry, from one of the biggest names in the business. Eason Chen and Chris Gorin in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan is planning to limit exports of quantum computers and advanced chip-making equipment. That's as it expands controls on potential dual-use technologies sold overseas. To learn how this might impact the tech supply chain, our reporter Ai Chi spoke with Dai Ziyan. He's the deputy director of the Center for Science and Technology Policy Evaluation at the Zhonghua Institution for Economic Research.
What's behind Taiwan's move to further tighten up export controls on potential dual-use technology?
我们其实目前来看的话，就是只是把这些项目重新再做 review， 重新把它定义得更完整，然后呢，避免这一些台湾重要的这种军民两用的技术，流到可能对国际上有敌意或是容易产生动荡的这种地区啦。那这些国家可能就包含像伊朗，那北韩。那中国大陆跟俄罗斯，那主要是因为他们过去会利用这样的技术，除了一方面增强他们民用技术的进步之外，那更多其实会拿去做一些国防的应用。
Taiwan added these restrictions to comply with the Wassenaar Arrangement. What is this, and what are Taiwan's obligations under it?
那个协议是一个欧洲、美国这些40几个国家联合起来的一个协议，在这个条约下面。它事实上是要去限制某一些比较前瞻、先进、敏感的技术，流到可能对于全球有比较威胁的一些地区出来。那台湾其实虽然不是缔约国啦，但是因为我们在整个过程里面，其实都会跟我们的友好国家做比较多的国际贸易，所以我们也不希望说，因为我们自己的不小心。让台湾变成这一些重要敏感科技流向不应该去地方的那个发源地那这个其实对我们来讲可能就会有损伤，像中国制的这种冰箱、洗衣机的晶片，最后被俄罗斯拿去用在它的这些武器上所以一旦我们被发现有这样的行为的时候，其实可能会面对我们原来的这些贸易伙伴的一些制裁，比方说提高关税、禁止我们的货物输出这样的一个行为所以我们必须要去遵守这样的一个规范，然后来确保我们在一般的这一种国际贸易上面能够维持一个比较正常的一个地位。
How might these new rules impact Taiwan's chip exports and supply chain?
目前台湾主要的出口大概都还是在欧美国家为主啦，那反而是到这些比较敏感性的国家去的市场占比，其实你可以看到，如果从海关的资料上来看，它不会特别大。但是这种案件通常也不是以规模或金额来看，而是说它可能成功1次2次之后， 然后它会带动这些国家买这些技术产品的国家，它在某一些生产能力也好，或者说它产品的品质上面能够有明显的这种跃升，那这个是我们比较不愿意看到的。那台湾的公司能够做这样的生意的，其实也不是特别多，所以目前看起来的话，就是说我们只是强化了更明确的定义，然后项目是有增加，但实质上可能对我们的影响上并不会特别大。那这个对于全球的供应链来讲的话，大概还没有一个很大的 impact， 因为主要我们早就已经 follow 这样的一个规则尽量避免把这些敏感的高科技流向到有冲突意外的这些地区或是国家去。
That was Dai Ziyan from Taiwan-based think tank Seer. U.S. President Donald Trump says he plans to approve the sale of F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia. Riyadh has long sought F-35s, which the U.S. has previously limited to its closest allies. Israel is currently the only country in the Middle East to operate them. Israeli officials voiced concerns the sale could alter the region's military balance. Trump's remarks came a day before Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is set to visit the White House for talks. The UN Security Council has voted to back U.S. President Donald Trump's peace plan for Gaza. The 20-point plan includes the establishment of an international stabilization force, which U.S. officials say would involve troops from yet-to-be-named countries. Hamas objected to the resolution, saying it would not disarm. All but 2 of the 15 Security Council member states voted in favor of the resolution, with Russia and China abstaining. Taiwan's cabinet is seeking an additional $870 million for flood recovery for the storm-ravaged East Coast.
所需财源全数以举债支应。此次灾情严重冲击光复乡等地，为推动整体灾后复原重建工作，本特别预算案的规模规划了办理灾区复原重建项目，共计有10项，包括马太安溪堰塞湖整治。
The special budget being reviewed by the legislature includes funding for agricultural recovery, road repairs, and rebuilding in Hualien County. It will also be used to monitor the status of barrier lakes, naturally formed dams that can pose a threat to locals. Barrier lakes in the area flooded multiple times during this year's storm season, killing 19 people and causing extensive damage. One person has been confirmed dead in Yilan, the only death in Taiwan connected to tropical storm Fung Wong. Officials in the northeastern town of Suao say the woman lived alone and her family lost contact with her last Tuesday. The announcement comes almost a week after Fung Wong hit Taiwan and 6 days after the body was found. Local officials have apologized for the delay. Her family says it meant they were unable to apply for compensation. Ousted Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been sentenced to death for crimes against humanity related to her crackdown on student-led protests last year. A tribunal found Hasina guilty of allowing lethal force to be used against people protesting government job quotas. Around 1,400 demonstrators were killed. Hasina fled to India after being forced from power. She's denied all charges, calling the trial politically motivated. New Delhi has not complied with requests to extradite Hasina back to Bangladesh. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Before we go, we leave you with images of Japan's Mount Fuji framed by golden and red autumn leaves. I'm Tiffany Wong. Take care and see you next time.
The CPBL season may have ended, but in Taiwan, baseball never sleeps. The countdown to the 2026 World Baseball Classic has already begun.
希望说在年底我们可以选出一个就是团队默契跟实力坚强的一个球队，然后尽力的去打好我们的比赛这样子。
The season never ends when it's game on Taiwan. Stay tuned. The next battle begins now.